My name is Julian Bonanno, and I live in West Hollywood, California,
And where did you grow up?
Malibu, California.
And could you tell us something about your background in terms of employment, but also maybe education, employment, and then how you became interested in the Seventh-day Adventist?
Okay, my education, high school, college, degrees, uh, and I sort of on a religious soul searching um, endeavor, I guess. And I wanted to find where I fit. I was raised Roman Catholic. I worked in model management for years, but it was still sort of empty. So, like I said, I went on this pilgrimage, I guess, to find my religious purpose. And I happened to be living at the time in Hollywood, California. And there was a Seventh-day Adventist church right off the 101 freeway. And so I decided to just walk in one day. And ironically, my cousin lived on the side street called Taft, and I decided to just walk in. I enjoyed the pastor. I liked the doctrine at the time, but still there was something missing. I just always felt that there was something missing. And then I met a girl who was helping take care of the children during service. And I got to know her a little bit. And then after the service, we congregated and ate together. And that's when I really got to know her. And her name was Kathy,
Okay, you want to get the full name, please?
Kathy Andrade. And she was amazing. I learned so much from her. But the funny thing about Kathy is that she was just as much of a searcher as I was, or at least so I thought she was. Um, and she asked me one day, if you really want to know more about what the Seventh-day Adventists believe in and the doctrine, I can introduce you to someone that could really teach you more. It seemed to me that she had been raised a Seventh-day Adventist, but she seemed like she was sort of new in the doctrine, if you will. So I went with her one day to the city of Pomona, and it was a house, and it was afternoon, and they were having a Bible study, or the Bible study was about to begin. Actually, I remember that.
Did you know the people there?
I only knew Kathy. I only knew Kathy. So they walked in. There were a lot of people, and I was like, I was introduced to a few people. The names escape me, and so I sat down, and it began, and I started taking mental notes. But the funniest thing is, the person that was facilitating the Bible study didn't look like a pastor to me, or what I assumed is what a pastor should look like. And I listened and I listened, and I was like, okay, this is sort of up my alley a little bit. I'll keep listening. There was a break, and I looked at him, and that person would have been David Koresh. And I had said to him point blank, I said, you're either an effective liar / con artist, or you really know your Bible. Because thinking back, I knew there was a Bible in the room because I remember seeing it on the table, but I don't remember him actually holding the Bible. He was quoting scripture after scripture. And so that's when I said to him, I said, you're probably a good con artist. He turned to me and said, what if I'm both? And I said, I don't know if that's a bad thing. And he said, "Are you going to stay?" And I said, "Do you want me to stay?" He goes, "Are you going to stay?" And I said, "We're doing this all wrong. I'll just stay and see if you really are a con artist." And he laughed and he goes, "Well, have a seat." And I sat down. And as the hours went on, it was about a total of 4 hours, 4.5 maybe. And I took a lot of notes. And I would have to say, I believed him. I believed that he was a true believer in what he was preaching. I believe that this was a man that would not put people's lives in precarious and or a dangerous situation. But I found that he was very firm in his belief system. And I got that because I'm really good at reading people. My mom and dad used to say, "Don't ever lose that." So I think I read him pretty well, pretty right on. And I liked what I was hearing and liked what I saw.
Do you remember what he was teaching?
Well, I remember he was quoting scripture out of the book of Revelation. And it's funny because I've always felt that most churches, most religions don't teach or read from that book too much. So I was intrigued and I liked what he was talking about. It's, the last days, things of that nature. And I said, "Oh, I really like this. They don't teach us in other churches." I mean, on my search, I was raised Roman Catholic. I didn't find it in Catholicism. I didn't find it even in Buddhism. I'm not knocking one's faith. Everyone has a different walk. But I sort of found my place when I was listening to him speak. And so I've always referred to myself, my friends always ask me, "What religion are you?" I said, "What religion am I, or what religion was I born into?" They go, "Both." I said, "Roman Catholic. I became a Buddhist by choice, but I became a student of the Seven Seals by my own volition." That's sort of how I always refer to it. I don't consider myself Branch Davidian because I'm not that well tuned in. So I always just consider myself a student of the Seven Seals because I do read it. Do I understand it completely? Does anyone understand the Bible completely? I don't think so. We are a work in God's progress. So, that's sort of how I look at everything anyway.
What year was that when you met him?
I believe it had to been 1990 or at the very least 1991. Remember that. Yeah.
And you heard him speak more than once?
I had been to the house more than once, but I only met David Koresh that one time then. And if he was there the second time, I didn't see him. But that one time, he impressed me. He really impressed me. And, I wish I could have learned more, I guess.
So you were really impressed with his knowledge of the Bible and his ability to put the passages of the Bible together to understand the seven seals. And how it was?
Correct. And I was really impressed that, one after another, he was quoting scripture. I know some scripture, but I can't quote it word for word. It was literally word for word. I've never known anyone to do that. Not even my priest that I grew up with. I don't think he can quote scripture, but David Koresh could. And he obviously knew it.
Did he have, the word charisma has more than one meaning, so like in the entertainment industry, for example, charisma would be somebody, I guess, who's attractive and communicates really well and has a good persona to draw people in. That's one understanding. understanding of the word charisma in religious studies or the sociology of religion. When we talk about charisma, we define it as when people, followers, believe that someone has access to a higher source of authority. And so I guess I wanted to ask you, did David Koresh have charisma in either of these senses? And for instance, in terms of a higher source of authority, did you think he was just a really smart guy who could give this great Bible study, or did you think that maybe he might have been divinely inspired to have that knowledge?
I think divinely inspired for sure. But I think that he was also given the gift of having charisma. I think usually they don't go hand in hand, at least in my experience. But in David Koresh's case, this sounds kind of crazy. I do believe that he spoke or heard God speaking to him. I think that he was a man that really did follow God's lead. And the charisma. I mean, when I walked into the room, I mean, it was almost like the elephant was in the room. I mean, I felt it the moment I walked in there, and I could feel it. I mean, it made me sort of say, "Okay, I think I feel at home here." And then he spoke, and I got it. I got it, and his charisma, whatever, like in entertainment, there's that thing called the it factor. He had the it factor, just not in entertainment. He had it in another realm, but he had it.
Actually, could you define the it factor for people who are watching your interview? What do you mean by it factor?
Well, in entertainment, for example, you have to have all the checks and balances have to be in place. You have to know your lines. You have to be beautiful. You have to be smart. Your body has to be chiseled. David Koresh had that charisma, that it factor that could have and would have taken him to places that he had never been before. Even though his ministry wasn't as long as most, it made a very, very indelible impression on many. I'm one of many. I'm sure there's a lot more, but I very much believe that had things been different, I probably would have gone to Waco myself, and I probably would have wanted to learn more, and stay and live the word every day. But unfortunately, that wasn't in the cards at that time. But I still consider myself a student of the Seven Seals. I read it. Again, like I said earlier, do I understand it completely? No, I don't. But I don't think anyone understands the Bible completely. We want to.
So you went back to the house. Who was speaking, or who was giving Bible studies and subsequent visits?
The second time I went back, I only went back to want a Bible study, but unfortunately, David was not there, and so I left. But like I said, I went there a second time. He wasn't there. I left. So really, I met him that one time, but like I said, he impressed me. He really, really impressed me, and I left feeling completely full. I kept telling friends of mine I felt full in the sense that everything I heard for those hours I was there, I felt fulfilled. I felt fulfilled.
So he could really open up the scriptures about the imminent events of the end time.
Correct. Correct. And, again, I was really intrigued. And thinking now, about how things happen within his ministry, it's just very interesting to me that after all these years, there's those of us that are still out here that we still very much believe in what he was preaching. I only met him once. There are people that had studied with him for years. And those are the people that I very much respect and always want to learn more from. And that's sort of my ambiguous journey through all of this is that I'm always learning something new every day.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about events in 1993 in a little bit, but after what happened to the community in 1993, as some survivors came out of jail, especially a prison, especially Clyde Doyle, he began to make audio tapes of all of David Koresh's recorded Bible studies available to anybody who wanted them. Did you get copies of these audio tapes and have you listened to them? Do you listen to them?
I did get copies of them. I have them in my storage. Do I listen to them currently? No. Have I listened to them in the past? Yes. Yes.
And did you feel like you learned from those Bible studies?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Well, you started out talking about Kathy Andrade, and eventually Kathy Andrade went out to Mount Carmel. But could you tell me something? Speak more about Kathy Andrade and her sister Jennifer Andrade, please.
Yes. So Kathy went to Waco. I remember that. And I remember she had said that she, at the time, I think she was thinking about moving to Texas, or she was going to Texas for a visit. No, it was a visit. That's right, it was a visit. And she went and she came back. And when I spoke to her, she was going to move to Texas. And then she had gone. And then her sister Jennifer had followed. These are two sisters that, from meeting both of them, these were sisters that were extremely close. And Jennifer, I think, went to Waco to be closer to her sister, but then she too was searching, and she found what she was looking for as well. The plus was that her sister just happened to be there too.
And do you happen to recall what ages they were when they went out to join David Koresh's group?
I don't remember, but hold on. Let me see. Jenny must have been 19 or 20. Kathy had to have been 21, maybe 22, roughly, give or take. There was a few year difference between them. Kathy was older. Yeah, I think they were both in their early 20s. I remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
Did you happen to know their parents, and what did they think about their two daughters going to live in this community following David Koresh?
I only spoke to her mother once. I know that they weren't very they weren't really happy about how things turned out. I think they wanted something different for their daughters, which is understandable, I suppose. And then because I remember when Kathy went and Jenny followed, they didn't come back. They stayed in Texas. That became their permanent home. And so they were living within the confines of the community and living the word every day.
So when they went to live with the David Koresh's community, did you receive communications from Kathy or Jennifer, for instance, in the form of letters or anything like that?
I didn't get a letter. I think I had spoken to Kathy on the phone a few times. And then, it's like John Lennon says, life happens as you're making other plans. And it's sort of what happened. But I knew that they were both in a good place. I know that the last time I spoke to Kathy, she seemed so happy. She seemed so just exuberantly happy.
Had she had her baby yet, Chanel?
Yes.
That's part of her happiness.
I believe that probably was more about why she was happy versus anything else.
And why don't you, because I don't think the listeners can hear me very well. So why was she so happy, do you think? Maybe the baby's name, give the baby's name. Something.
She was happy because, she had her daughter Chanel. And she always wanted to be a mom, and now she was. And she's got this little girl now, and that she absolutely adored. And she had her sister there to boot. And she was a good aunt. So it became a family affair.
And out of that, the people who were attending Bible studies in California, did you say that was in Pomona, or where that was that?
Pomona, yeah.
So did any other members of that group, did they go out and live with David Koresh's community?
I believe they did. I can't remember by name who was there because I was introduced to a few people, sort of fuzzy, but I do know that majority of the people that went there for Bible studies, I believe they had gone to Texas as well.
So Kathy and Jennifer are living they're living in David Koresh's community. But then there were the events in 1993, and which ended up on April 19th, 1993, with a massive fire.
Correct.
And where were you when you first learned about that fire?
I was in college.
And how did you learn about it?
A fraternity brother of mine had asked me, "Don't you know people that live at that house in Waco, Texas?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "That whole place is on fire." And I ran to the cafeteria. And there it was plastered all over the news. And I was hoping and praying, like anyone would, that Jennifer and Kathy, got out. But I mean, it just looked from my eyes at that time. I mean, it just looked like the whole place was completely engulfed. I didn't think anyone would survive.
And how was it confirmed that they died?
It was confirmed as the days and weeks went on. I kept hoping and praying, that, they would say in the news of a female had survived. I was hoping that it was Jennifer or Kathy, and it wasn't. It was someone else. Then the names would come out. It was on a weekly, if not a daily basis. There'd be new names added, but I never saw them on a list. And then eventually, as time finally went on, a survivor had compiled a list of the living and the deceased, and that's when it was truly confirmed, that these people that I learned to really care about had passed. So that was a very difficult time.
And later, I think you learned about where they died and how they died. So how did you get that information?
I happened to come across a website that had a report. I think it was called the Danforth Report. And I had read it, and it discussed in gruesome detail, actually, of where the women and children were found, where certain people were found. And Kathy and Chanel were found inside the concrete bunker behind the door, because that was actually, it was sort of a refrigeration area. It was off to the kitchen. And then her body was found right outside the door. It was almost as if she was wanting to get to her sister and her niece, or so it seemed anyway.
Yeah, I want to clarify the thing about the door, because it was a concrete room, or the FBI called it a bunker.
Uh-huh.
It was a former vault that had survived a previous fire, and everything, all the contents of that vault were survived intact. But when they moved in a walk-in refrigerator into that room, they took the door off. The door was gone. There was no door to that room.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, you had a curtain hanging down. So when you said that Kathy's body was found behind the door, and I read something else that referred to a door, and I was confused because there was no door to the room.
Mm-hmm.
So please explain what you mean by behind the door.
Well, where the door was, there was just, how a corridor, that bottom portion, when you're walking, she was found just beyond that invisible line, if you want to call it that. That's where Jennifer was found. And then Kathy was beyond that on the other side. She was found in there with the women and the children. And that alarmed me. It was devastating to hear, because I was always under the impression that they were together in that same room. That was the impression that I assumed. And then when I found out later that was not the case, it was devastating to hear, because I was hoping that at least they were together, and unfortunately that was not the case.
Did you learn that they were gassed? That a combat engineering vehicle had driven into the center of the building to spray CS gas or tear gas directly into that enclosed room?
Yes, I had heard that. Yeah, I had.
And what was your reaction to that?
My reaction was two things. One, I was worried about people I knew. Second was, how can this be happening on American soil? I mean, it unfolded for the whole country to see, the whole world to see. I was in shock, just absolutely in shock. Could not believe, and even now, still can't believe that it even happened. It should not, again, be happening on American soil, let alone unfolding on television. This is about real, living, breathing people. And I think one of the things that really alarmed me so much also was that a large number of the people that were inside were foreign subjects. and their own governments didn't get involved. I found that alarming, just alarming.
Okay, well, speaking about the other people who died and those who were the majority of the people who were Branch Davidians who died in that event and in the fire were Black people. They were British with roots in Jamaica. So, do you think that was perhaps why the their government didn't try to intercede on their behalf?
I thought that for a long time, and I still do think that for the most part, even now. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the autopsy. So you have a brother with expertise who gave you feedback on the autopsy. Could you talk about that, please?
Yes. So I think, from what I was told,
First of all, explain who your brother is and what his area of expertise is.
my brother's area of expertise is forensic pathology, and I called him one day because there was a website that had the autopsy reports. And so I was trying to understand the verbiage because I didn't understand what certain things meant. Certain things I did, but then there was a large portion I did not understand. So I had my brother go through it with me over the phone as I was looking at it, and he was saying, "Oh, this is what this means. This is what that means." I said, "Okay." And he said, "But something doesn't sound right here." And that's when I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he goes, "If they're saying this is what happened to this person, and then there's something different in the writings of how the person actually died, there's something wrong. Something was altered." And I said, "Well, what do you mean something was altered?" He goes, "It sounds as if the autopsy reports on a large number of the people that were inside who died, it looks as if the autopsy reports themselves may have been altered in some way."
And did he have that same comment in relation to the autopsies of Kathy Andrade and Jennifer Andrade?
Yes, yes. He had felt that as well. He said these reports don't match how these women supposedly died. There's something not right here. And my feeling was always that, sounds awful to say, but that the government or someone higher up made sure that the general public did not know how a lot of the people truly died, is my guess. Or they were afraid. They didn't want people to really know. You know, they were scared how it would look, or they were more concerned about how they would be perceived. That's always been my feeling anyway.
I believe you came to some of the memorials, especially in the early years and later years as well. Can you share something about the early memorials?
The early memorials, I remember, were very somber in the early years. They were pretty somber. And as time went on, everyone was learning to heal. But with any memorial, you know, you go back, you think back, and you're like, wow, you know, it's still a little painful. It still stings a little bit. But as time goes on, it does lessen. But you never forget it. It sort of stays with you. It's always been hard to try to make sense of how such a huge tragedy can happen, and so many lives were affected. The lives of the families who lost loved ones, the lives of everyone who died on the property in itself. It didn't matter when it was. I mean, April 19th, February 28th, it just, there was an enormous amount of loss.
You attended the 30th anniversary memorial recently. What was your impression of that memorial and whether people are healing?
Of all the memorials that I went to, and I've been to quite a few, the 30th anniversary, it was very special. It was very special. I mean, when it was getting closer to the month of April, I kept thinking, wow, it's been almost 30 years. And then here I am, April 1st, thinking, wow, in a few more weeks, it's going to be the 30th anniversary. And you sort of pinch yourself, wondering, did 30 years really just pass that fast? But it did. But what a classy tribute to everyone who has passed during that time, and people who have passed on, even who were friends of people who were inside, or family members who had, I mean, it was very, very classy. It was a beautiful, beautiful event. And I saw people I hadn't seen in years. You know, it's sort of true what they say. You don't see people that you love and care about unless someone is born or someone dies. And it was a beautiful memorial and a tribute to the people who passed. But more than that, I mean, the Taylor Museum did an incredible job. Even the people who themselves are involved with the museum, and even people behind the scenes, everyone that was involved did such an incredible job, and the hard work that went into it was just amazing, just amazing. And as far as the healing process, my friends who lost loved ones, they're well. I think that their lives have been changed forever, obviously, but they are really pushing forward, you know, raising families, having jobs, but trying hard to not be a person that is a victim, even though, yeah, they are a victim, but they don't want to be a victim. They don't let it plague them. I think that they move on the best way that they know how. One day, 1 second at a time. And they give me strength. I look at some of my friends who are Davidians and God, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how they do it. As one friend of mine said, how did you rebuild? And they simply said, we just do. Simple answer, simple question. But you have to understand that they went through something that was so catastrophic. I mean, what does 1-2 do? Do you lay down and cry the rest of your life, or do you pick yourself up and try to pick up the pieces? And that's what they did. They picked up the pieces. And it was a beautiful tribute to so many so many people that lost their lives. It was a beautiful tribute. And thanks to everyone that was involved.
And at this memorial, a number of the survivors shared. There are more survivors there than usual at the memorial. So quite a few, I think all of them shared. So what did you think about things that they said at the memorial?
I was very moved by everything that they all said. But I think the thing that really moved me was there was a young woman who lost her father, and a series of family members, and it still hurts, but she handled it. Even though she cried, she handled it so stoically because it has become a part of her. And now, she's a mom now. And it's just hard to believe that at the time, these were children, and now they're grown adults that are raising families of their own. I think the thing that moved me so much about when she was speaking, she sort of broke down a little bit, and everyone just said, "We love you." And this is a community of people that really love each other. And I think people forget that this woman is an incredible mom now. And the amount of life that this family lost, we're talking double digits. A grandfather, aunts, cousins. And it just, no family should have to go through that. But again, she handled it so well. And her brothers were there. And you just see them and you just hug them, and you're so happy of how these, last time I actually saw them, they were kids. Now they're adults. They're all grown up. And life has moved on, and they've held down jobs and raising families. And it's just hard to believe that all that time has passed. And yet it's still a part of them. But again, they've never let it plague who they are. And I think, like I said earlier, these are the people that give me strength. When I look at how they've handled their life, how things have turned out, everything else is secondary. It puts everything into its own proper box and into perspective of what really is important. And I think, again, when she went up there and spoke, I was sitting in the back of the room with a lady friend of mine. And, I just broke down. I mean, I don't know how she did it. And there was another woman that talked about what it means to be a mom, and how her husband thought trying to get home. I mean, and I think the thing that I find very disheartening is the way that when you look at the media's part in all of this, is that it was referred to the Davidian home as a compound. And all you heard in reference to the compound was guns, fire, ATF. The Davidians shot first. It didn't matter who shot first. The bottom line, there was an enormous amount of life. One life is too many. It didn't matter who shot first. Again, too many. And a lot of the people that died in that fire, a lot of them were children. So you have to ask yourself, if people say we have time to sit out and wait for you guys to come out, well, did it work? Because this girl and her brothers and other people who all grew up in that faith, they lost everyone. They were wiped out. And we all watched. So what does that make us? Does that make us culpable or just as culpable? or does it mean that we find a way to live with it and understand it and study it and make sure that it doesn't happen again? I mean, case in point, I mean, it was said not long after everything had happened, that CS2 gas equals fire. Case in point, 1974, Patty Hearst, SLA, fire kills people. Chicago, fire kills people because of CS2 gas. Why are we using CS2 gas? We don't even use it in warfare anymore. It was abolished by the Geneva Convention. And you're using it in a house where there are men, women, and children in a religious group. And then you're putting it into a room where women and children are? No. Mm-mm. That's not the America that I know.
Do you have any ideas about why the American public accepted this at first? I mean, a lot. Well, I don't know. In some ways, the views of the public have changed. In some ways, the views of the people have just forgotten about it as the different generations of people grow up. But at the time in '93 and shortly after that, why do you think the American public sort of accepted this to happen on television and not care so much about the innocent people, including the children who died?
I think that it was a very carefully executed plan via media, via federal government. I think that it was a plan that they didn't want people to sympathize for those who were inside. And also the general public, you have to understand at that time, I mean, the internet was sort of an infant, but not really. It was sort of getting there. It was still AOL at the time. So it was a little archaic, but I don't think the general public knew any better. They believed like, one's grandparents believed, they're telling the truth, therefore, it's okay. But then you find out later that it was all a very, very carefully executed plan. I mean, I had heard and know that, the media was told not to release videos of the women and children until after the siege was over. After the 51-day siege was over. Why after? I think they all knew that it was saying this, but they all knew it was a kill mission at the end of the day. That's what I've always felt, and that's what I still feel.
And why would it have been a kill mission? To make that really explicit.
Well, I think when I think back, okay, so in February of '93, there was a package that was delivered to Mount Carmel. And supposedly a grenade fell out of a box. I personally think that was accidentally on purpose. I don't think that there was no grenade, but that was what they were going with. I think that they had every opportunity, if they really wanted to arrest David Koresh, they had every opportunity to do so. I mean, he went jogging every day. He was in town all the time. He went to Walmart all the time. They had every opportunity to arrest him if they wanted to, and they never did. And yet, the search warrant talks about things that have nothing to do with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. That is completely ludicrous to me. The BATF is about alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. They talk about stockpiling of weapons. It's Texas. The way the men made money at Mount Carmel, gun shows. It's Texas. It's not uncommon to go down Simmons Highway or anywhere in Dallas, Waco, Austin, anywhere in the state of Texas. It's not uncommon to see a gun mount in the back of someone's truck or car. It's not uncommon. It's Texas. So for them to say stockpiling of weapons, I find that hard to believe. And one more thing while I'm on the subject, not to go off subject, but it's very funny to me that during the congressional hearings, it was very funny to me that the door miraculously just disappears. No one seems to know where the door is. Jack Zimmerman was interviewed, and so was Dick DeGuerin.
And who were they?
They were attorneys for the Branch Davidians at the time. I think Zimmerman was, I think Steve Schneider's, and Dick DeGuerin was retained by David Koresh's mother to represent David. And even they could not figure out what happened to the door. They had asked. No one seemed to know. We are United States of America. We make it our business to know everything about everyone, and we can't find a door? No. And there's just too much. See, at the time in 1993, video footage was sort of at its infancy, but it still existed. I don't think that anyone counted on there being video footage of the actual day of the shootout, but there was. I don't think they counted on that. But the thing was that I saw an interview one time with Jack Zimmerman, and I remember he said that he and Dick DeGuerin had gone into Mount Carmel and said that the walls look like Swiss cheese. There was gunshots all over the place. Again, why is this happening on American soil in a house? Makes no sense. Again, if they wanted to arrest David, they could have done it in town. And by the way, the sheriff, he knew the people inside. People had pleaded with the federal government, look, we know people inside, we can help bring them out. The government said, we don't need your help, we've got it under control. Is this the best that we have for under control in America? I don't know, this isn't the America that I remember.
So the ATF assault was on February 28th, and then after that, the FBI came in and presided over the next 50 days of the siege. So why would the FBI be on challenge, in your opinion?
I think it was a kill now, ask questions later. It was, we got to get rid of this problem. We got to get rid of it now. This has gone on too long. It's gone too far. Then there were the supposed, issues of child molestation, child abuse. And yet Joy Sparks from Texas Children's Services came out and found nothing wrong with the children. And a Davidian who came out, who also went to jail for a period of time, he even said at the 20th anniversary, he said, why are we still talking about child abuse? There was no child abuse. They were cleared of that. And yet that's what was in the search warrant, child abuse. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms has nothing to do with child abuse. That goes under the child welfare section. So there were just a lot of things, and I think that they wanted a neatly tight-bowed package, and I think it wasn't working for them. And so it was, we got to get rid of the problem, and getting rid of the problem meant let's go to plan B, and plan B was to kill them now and let's ask questions later, because we got to make this go away.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
I'd like to say that we got to make sure that this doesn't happen again to another religious group, or heaven forbid, just a family that's living quietly and not bugging anybody. I think that as far as my friends who passed and my friends who are still alive and working and making a living and raising families who are Davidians, these are people that are wonderful people, warm people, and not a cult. We have the right to disagree with theology, but we don't have the right to disagree of how a government takes full control and kills innocent men, women, and children in the end. Think first.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you.